one of the things that we try to do with these efforts is to connect not only policymakers, but researchers and community activists and advocates all across the city to those in government who are shaping the decisions so that they can hear from some of the wisdom on the ground in communities. They can hear from some of our collaborative partnerships with researchers. And we have in the commissioner that I'm about to introduce and bring to the stage yet another friend in government. At WEACT, we've known Vicki Been for quite some time in her work at NYU. She is one of the people that we would often sort of run across in the work to try to create better housing quality and more affordability, and really fight for environmental justice as well. So Commissioner Vicki Been is responsible for leading the nation's largest municipal housing agency and is charged with creating and implementing Mayor Bill de Blasio's Housing New York plan, a bold initiative to create or preserve 200,000 affordable homes and apartments over 10 years. Prior to her appointment as HPD Commissioner, Ms. Been was director of NYU Furman's Center for Real Estate and Urban Policy, a nationally renowned academic research center devoted to public policy aspects of land use, real estate, and housing development. It is really good to have people in the de Blasio administration who know something about the perspective that communities on the ground are facing and the challenges that they're facing. And so without further ado, I want to bring Commissioner Vicki Been to the stage and thank her for her indulgence. We're running a little bit late. But for the people, we can be a few minutes late, right? Thank you so much. Good to see you again.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for that introduction. I have had the pleasure of working with WEACT in all kinds of ways over the years, and it's really delightful to see all the work that you're doing on healthy homes. I thought it would be helpful to talk a little bit about the mayor's housing plan that was referenced earlier, and the synergies really between our efforts to build and preserve affordable housing and our city's health goals. As was mentioned, in May, Mayor de Blasio announced a 10-year housing plan, which we called Housing New York, a 5-borough 10-year plan that set as its goal to build and preserve 200,000 units of affordable housing over the next 10 years for a range of New Yorkers, from those with the very lowest of incomes to those with middle and moderate incomes, that are so often our firefighters, our teachers, and our first responders in all kinds of ways. The plan laid out about 50 different initiatives to get that housing built or rehabbed. And that's often what gets the headlines, that 200,000 number. But I think that also in the plan are several really key principles that I think we share with WEACT and with many of you in the room. It recognized that the city needed to undertake comprehensive community development to foster thriving and inclusive neighborhoods. It emphasized the critical importance of efforts to improve both the affordability but also the quality of our existing housing stock. And it committed the city to meet the needs of the special housing needs of those with extremely low income, the formerly homeless, the elderly, those in needs of supportive housing, and many of those whose health is often very precarious. Let me say just a few things about each of those different principles. And I will start, as the Housing New York plan did, with neighborhoods, because I think that's a critical focus of the plan and the mayor's efforts. Housing New York recognized that our development and preservation efforts have to be guided by meaningful community engagement. They have to be coordinated with public investments in infrastructure and services. And indeed, Housing New York really committed the city not just to build housing, but to build better neighborhoods, to work in partnership with the neighborhoods to help those neighborhoods meet their goals and improve in whatever way they want to improve. Now, to fulfill that mission, the city has made a variety of changes. I want to talk just about a couple that we've made at HPD. The first thing is that HPD has reorganized our research, our planning, and our neighborhood outreach activities into a new division that we call the Division of Neighborhood Strategies. The new division will be in charge of our planning efforts, our neighborhood preservation strategy, our efforts to engage and serve tenants, community leaders, landlords, local businesses, property owners, community boards, and other neighborhood stakeholders. It also will spearhead the very intense work with smaller owners and smaller buildings that will be critical to the success of several of the initiatives that the Mayor's Housing Plan lays out, including some of the energy efficiency measures that are so important to health issues. HPD has, of course, worked in neighborhoods for years, but the scope and the scale of the work that Housing New York envisions requires much better coordination and strategic thinking within HPD. So this new Neighborhood Strategies Unit will really take all that we learn on the ground through our housing code inspections and through our asset management and really take that on the ground understanding of the needs of the communities, the needs of the building stock, and use that information to better target our preservation efforts and our new construction efforts. Now, in order to build better neighborhoods in all 5 boroughs, we have to be better coordinated among the agencies and across the agencies. We're already deep in communications and trying to work to find ways that we can really leverage each other's activities. We're experimenting with a variety of different ways of doing that. Everybody comes into office and says, we're going to break down silos, we're going to work together better, we're going to keep each other informed, but it turns out to be a lot harder to do than to say, and we're trying to find some new models of working together. And I wanted to talk just for a second about one of those. We're piloting a project that we call the 100 Days to Progress initiative in Brownsville, Brooklyn. And the 100 Days to Progress initiative is a collaboration among more than 20 of the city agencies, the state Housing and Community Renewal, and the federal HUD, along with a variety of neighborhood groups that is really aimed at trying to leverage everything that all of these groups are doing to have bigger effect and bigger impact. We asked the agencies to commit to a variety of different short-term goals. In all, we had 44 different goals that were developed in conversation with the neighborhood groups and residents of the community. What do you need right now to show that things are turning around in Brownsville? The agencies committed to achieve 44 of those goals during the 100-day period. The 100 days started on September the 8th. We're now, today is day 72, so we're running out of time. But we're all working very hard on the kinds of commitments that we promised. The scale and reach of what we have underway is really quite remarkable. My team at HPD is experimenting with different ways of doing building inspections to try to improve the quality of those buildings. Often we respond to 311 complaints. We respond to complaints that we get from the neighborhood. But we decided to try something different this time, which was we analyzed where we were getting complaints. We basically drew a geographic area, and now we're going door to door, building to building, along with our partners at the fire department, the Department of Buildings, the Department of Health and Mental Health. And so we all go in together, look at a building from cellar to roof, and see what that building needs to bring it into to make it a more healthy environment. And then we work together as agencies to try to provide the help that the owner might need, or the nudging and enforcement that the owner might need to get it done. In addition to that effort, the health department is offering a wide variety of prenatal classes, exercise classes, fresh food programs. The Parks Department broke ground on a new and amazing Imagination Playground across from the Betsy Head pool. Small Business Services is working with the Pitkin Avenue bid to complete a facade improvement and to make the neighborhood safer. And the Department of Sanitation is doing all kinds of things, including putting public space recycling baskets all around the area to, again, try to improve the health and safety of the neighborhood. And I encourage you all to see our commitments and track our progress on www.brownsville100days.org. The 100 Days Initiative really recognizes that by coordinating our efforts, the whole should be greater than the sum of the individual parts. Our broader goal is really to catalyze lasting interagency collaboration and long-term partnerships that will make sure that all of our efforts work together and leverage off of each other to affect positive change in Brownsville and in other neighborhoods across the city. But the third thing that I wanted to mention in terms of working with neighborhoods is a new process that's being used for capital budgeting. In the city of New York for the last few decades, capital budgeting has been done by the Office of Management and Budget, and often it has been really what's been referred to as bilateral negotiations. HPD would go in and say, here's what we need. The Department of Transportation would go in and say, here's what we need. Education, et cetera, parks would go in, and everybody would negotiate to get as much as they could, knowing that some of that was coming out of the pots that other people were seeking. This year, for the first time in decades, the Department of City Planning is at the center of that process, and the Department of City Planning is trying to make sure that I'm talking to the Department of Transportation, and so that where I'm building my buildings, I'm working to make sure that the transit needed is going in alongside my investments, that the parks that are needed, the schools that are needed, the jobs that are needed, the retail that's needed, we're all working to align our capital budgets and our timing and schedules so that it's all going into a neighborhood at the same time in a much more holistic way and in a much more strategic and leveraged way. So that's what we're doing in terms of neighborhood development. Obviously, since I do have that big 200,000 number, our construction and preservation programs are also very, very key. We've launched a strategic preservation initiative that's really drawing upon our teams from enforcement, our teams from housing inspection, our housing litigation lawyers, our asset management, and really taking all that information and saying to our preservation group that finances the preservation, here's where you need to focus. Here are the ways that we can serve the neighborhood's goals by focusing on preservation. We're developing a wide range of new preservation tools. We're also trying to make sure that our tools meet a broader range of neighborhoods. We've traditionally focused our preservation efforts on projects that had received subsidies in the past, but that are now reaching the end of their regulatory agreement. We're trying now to reach even deeper, to go to buildings that have never gotten public subsidies and say to them, let us help you, let us give you an evaporating loan, let us help you make the energy retrofits that you need to give your tenants a much warmer, safer environment. Let us help you with water conservation. Let us repair or replace your boiler so you're not using number 6 oil, all of those things. And in exchange for that, we want you to lock in some affordability for your existing residents. So we're going to be trying that work with small buildings across the city. 2/3 of New York City's 2.1 million renter households live in buildings that are fewer than 50 units. And indeed, more than half of all of our low-income renters live in those small buildings. So they're a critical housing stock. They're often not in the best of shape, certainly not as energy efficient and water efficient as they could be. So we're really focusing on those buildings. Now, the mayor announced in September a major new initiative around climate change and around energy conservation. We have, for the last several years, we've insisted that all of our new buildings and our preservation efforts be energy efficient and sustainable. We implemented enterprise green home standards in 2009 for all of our development projects, but the mayor committed us to do a great deal more in the coming years. He committed, as you know, New York City to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions by 80% over 2005 levels by 2050. And we have developed several, I think, very exciting new programs to help further that climate plan. First, we're going to catalyze the retrofit of approximately 20,000 private buildings through what we're calling a retrofit accelerator program that will cover an estimated 15% of all of the buildable square footage, or the built square footage in the city. 2/3 of those buildings will be multifamily, and roughly 40% of them will be affordable or rent-stabilized buildings. The second thing that we're doing is we're creating a green grant program for affordable housing that will fund energy efficiency upgrades to help those buildings preserve affordability and be better places to live for their residents. We know that residential settings offer many opportunities to promote healthier living and better management of chronic disease. Health Commissioner Mary Bassett and I are working together to raise resources and support for a pilot project that we're calling a health super. Many buildings, of course, as you know, have a super who lives on premises, who gets a break on their rent in exchange for doing maintenance for the building. Well, we had an idea of why not have, in larger buildings, why not have a health super? A person whose job it was to design active classes to help residents make sure that they're getting the kind of medical help and health care that they need, to design no smoking programs, all of those kinds of things to help. The idea being, if we invest in a health super in some of these buildings, couldn't we make sure that the residents of those buildings are much healthier than they are now and are using fewer of the emergency room services and those kinds of things? So we're trying to raise money for that now, and we're very excited about piloting that and seeing if it makes a difference in the health of people living in the buildings. We also are continuing to encourage our developers to use active design principles in the design of their buildings. We have many, many development partners who have done innovative things with active design and have really shown that affordable housing can be both sustainable and encourage physical activity. At HPD, as was mentioned, knowing the facts and having research to back up the kinds of investments that you make is often very powerful. And we are evaluating the impact that affordable housing has on the health and many other outcomes of our residents through what we call the HANDS, the Housing and Neighborhoods Study, which is a study of 3,000 households that applied to one of our new affordable housing developments. Half of those people were offered the housing and moved into our housing. Half of them were eligible, but because we didn't have enough capacity, could not get into one of our buildings. We're comparing the health outcomes, the educational outcomes, the financial outcomes of those control group versus our treatment group, so to speak, and are already finding some very significant effects. For example, we have found that moving into our affordable housing buildings reduces asthma, reduces anxiety and depression, increases financial security, and of course improves housing quality and affordability. We're continuing on that study in a wide variety of measures, with about $5.9 million that we've raised from a variety of funders, including MacArthur, the National Institute for Health, the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation, and HUD. So I think that study is going to show just how important affordable housing is to our families and to their health, educational outcomes, and financial security. So I hope that gives you, a brief overview of some of the things that we're doing in our Housing New York plan, but also really to connect back up to the kinds of health issues that you're talking about today. Those are critically important. We know the link between housing and health is so very important, and really look forward to an ongoing collaboration between HPD and indeed all of the city agencies and the many of you in the room who are working so hard on health issues, and really hope that we can leverage our investments in affordable housing and the built environment to promote better health for so many New York residents. Thank you very much.
So Commissioner Been has been so excellent. She has us back on schedule. We want to thank her for that. And as a result of that, we get to ask one question. Uh-oh. All right.
I know that this, yeah. My question
Tell
is...
us your name. Just tell us your
Yeah, my name's David. My question is, in terms of housing, let's say a multi-story building, 12 stories, 100 apartments. With global warming and the studies that are saying that we're going to have more days of over 90 degrees in the summertime, that seniors may or may not have air conditioning, and they live in, let's say, a studio, which is a hot box. So there's a conflict where they would like to open the doors for the hallway and the stairwell to get cross ventilation. Okay. Now, you obviously have a conflict with the fire department and the fire standards. So as energy costs rise and we want to try and reduce our carbon footprint, is there some kind of compromise that we can have so seniors and other citizens in these hard-pressed economic times don't have air conditioning and get cross-ventilation? So can you address that, please?
Thank you, David. Actually, I was reminded of this because my son, who is in law school in New Haven, moved into I would say about a 1920s building that has these very charming shutters on the front door of every apartment, so they can open them up, still have the security, but get the cross ventilation, and it, of course, works wonderfully. But it is a conflict with some of the fire regulations. We are working very hard. We're actually in the middle of a rewrite of our housing maintenance code, and we're working very closely with the Department of Buildings. We're going to be looking at exactly those kinds of things. So I can't promise because we haven't seen we're still working on that, but it's a great point, and we are working to try to find solutions that, do, as you said, reach a compromise. Okay? Okay, thank you so much. Great to see you.